X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where normally we rank every X-Men story from A to Z, but instead this time we are going to be talking to artist Declan Shalvey. You may know his work from the ongoing Image series Time Before Time. You may know his upcoming stuff with in Elektra, Black, White, and Blood. Moon Knight was a pretty big deal at a certain point, and y'all should check that out. And then currently just wrapped up on Marvel Unlimited with the relaunch, the X-Men Unlimited Infinite comic. Declan, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks very much.
It's fun to have you. By the way, if this is your first episode, I'm Zach, and we also have Adam. Hi, Adam. I didn't do our normal intro. I forgot.
No, it's okay. I'm here too. Declan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure.
Now let's just jump right into this. So you had recently put out a thing saying, "Hey, I'm excited about this," and you took on this role because X-Men was such a bucket list project for you. I'm curious, what about this project made it so exciting for you to, go from a firm commitment you had of I'm only going to draw the stuff that I'm writing to, okay, well, I'm going to do this one though.
Well, it was X-Men. That'll do it. Because I that's how I got into comics. Spider-Man, X-Men was the thing for me, and I've always wanted to do X-Men stuff. I remember when I was doing Deadpool in my head, I'm like, this is technically X-Men stuff. So, I remember we did these weird zombified versions of the X-Men, so I kind of got to draw Cyclops and Storm and stuff. So no, I've been a massive X-Men fan, but no, yeah, I had been kind of I'd made the decision to just kind of write and draw my own stuff, but it was my birthday back in January, and Jordan White, who I'm sure you're familiar with, sent me an email. And I've worked with Jordan loads over the years.
He was the editor back on that Deadpool Good, Bad, and the Ugly arc that you did.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's the first time, maybe a short story or two or something. But yeah, that's kind of how I got to know Jordan. And it's years ago now. And I've done like various covers and Return of a Wolverine a couple of years ago. So I probably worked with Jordan more than any other editor, to be honest. But he just asked he asked if I'd be up for doing this X-Men thing with John. I was like, getting to work with John Hickman would be pretty cool. But he said what it was, and it was that I don't think he called them Infinity Comics, but he said what they were trying to do. They were going to launch this line of vertical books, and I probably wouldn't have done it except for the fact that John was attached and it was X-Men. Mm-hmm. And it was essentially a Wolverine story. I mean, if you're just going to get to draw basically one, then that's the one to draw. Yeah, I'm not really a digital comics reader, to be honest. I'm not particularly interested in the format as a reader. But I thought it was pretty cool that Marvel were trying something. It's kind of one thing I might say, like sometimes the bigger companies don't really try much. And I've been a big fan of like what Hickman and everybody else has done with the X-Men line. I remember years ago thinking, if I could do the X-Men, what would I do? And that's just going to sound stupid, but it was something similar to what they're doing, which is basically, hard reboot, like not reset, but reboot, And I was just very much admired the kind of moves that the whole line has made. I just thought it's been so cool. So to kind of dip my toe in that regard, doing something that was a bit innovative. Like I said, as a reader, I wasn't that keen, but as an artist, I thought it would actually be interesting. Because I like to do splash pages. I like working left to right, that kind of vision stuff, and that was gone. Mm-hmm. But those options do not exist in that. I'm like, this is going to suck. I don't want to do this. But then I think with talking to John, and realize the capabilities of what you can do that you can't do in the other medium, and how I would make that work. I don't know. It just became something that was creatively challenging. And getting to do an X-Men book and getting to work with John, it was kind of three three positives. If there's three positives of something, I think it's definitely worth taking on board.
Now, I think some people might actually be surprised, having looked at the Infinity comic. You only work traditionally. You are not working digitally here, and you just said, like, the traditional left to right is just how comic artists generally work. But here you have to think vertically. So how did you have to adapt your process for drawing these vertical scroll comics?
Well, it was. Yeah, for like I'm all about the left and right, not just like that you read left to right, but like I use a lot of horizontal panels to kind of lead the eye in a left right kind of motion. And yeah, that doesn't exist in this, but I kind of made it work. The way I wanted this is because I'd like to see this in print someday. So for me, it was like, how do I do this in a way that can work in both, which is pretty tough. So it was actually an idea of John. John had this suggestion of working in columns. So the page is basically split down the middle. So that means you basically have a long vertical shot. Mm-hmm. And within those two columns, you can either have the column or you can work other panels into it. And I kind of messed around in Photoshop just to see how that might work. And it did work. It's actually really interesting. It's like when I worked with Warren on Moon Knight, sometimes you're working in a script and you're putting the puzzle together and you're like, that's what they were doing. Like, when you read a script, it's just all words, and then you start kind of blocking things out and all kind of starts, all the equations appear in front of your head, in front of your eyes. But so for me, I mean, if you see the original pages, to me, they should read okay. They should read well. There's a certain kind of, I think it'll be interesting if you read it in print, because it does have that kind of column construction, which I think would be like, it would be terrible in a random page. If you're just going to randomly see that in a comic, it would be terrible. It would be bad storytelling. But I think if the whole story is like that, I think it'll kind of pull you into a certain way of storytelling. So I'm curious how that'll, because there's no way to know that until, actually ever get to see it in print like that. But I had to construct it in a way in which I felt it would read in that format, but also take advantage of the vertical. So I normally do all my layouts and I figured it all out. I took my layouts and I cut them up in Photoshop and I assembled them in a vertical way. And then I saved those JPEGs and I like sent them to myself on my phone. And then I opened them up on my phone and I was scrolling my layouts, which is kind of weird. But it was a good, and I showed it to my roommate, just like, how is this? And, it was interesting to see somebody read something. It was a great way to kind of like, do a test run like that. But ultimately, I mean, it's not that hard to work the vertical format, because you can't go any direction. You can only go down, which is in itself extremely limiting in a bad way. But it also means that you can kind of play around with, I think the reader doesn't have any control of what they read, but they do have full control of how they read, as in the pacing changes. So it's very interesting to have complete dictatorial, control over the direction, but like play around with how maybe it'll be paced. I'm sure I did in my weaker moments looked up some reviews and I saw some people crapping on like that. You have to scroll all the time, but I'm like, yeah, it's a vertical comic. You really do. But but it's subjective. It depends on how somebody reads it. And and it's interesting now because I'm writing one now, and I found I'm actually kind of writing it in the layouts, because I mean, all the other people who've written for the format would be interesting, because it's not really a format you can't really write to the format that well. I think John did it really well. To actually, I have to credit him, but for me doing it now, it's very hard to picture how you're going to construct it in a script and how it's going to be put down on pages, because you kind of have infinite space. But for me, like I think I talked to Nate Stockman and he drew it.
Nate Stockman, who did the Shang-Chi comic with Elisa Wong.
Yeah, and he didn't draw it digitally, but he didn't do it the same way I did. So I don't think the way I have it, it could be in print. I think the way that Nathan had to work it didn't. And it's interesting seeing how different people play with the format, whether it like I have to commend Marvel. I think it was really interesting of them to invest in this format rather than just like, take panels and rearrange them to try work vertically, which is essentially what I did with my layouts. But I was going in knowing that they have to be this shape no matter what. They
Right.
can't be any wider. They can be thinner. And I played with that a little bit. So when you're scrolling, it's not always just one panel you see. Sometimes there's more than one panel. And I remember thinking that might be a problem, but I feel your thumb is always going to be on the page scrolling it. So you're not going to be reading panels before you want to. You're going to kind of, and that was the help with actually trying to do it on my layouts, was like, oh yeah, it's not like you see this panel, then the next panel, then the next panel. It's a kind of a freewheeling experience, so you're controlling what you see. So I think I think it worked anyway. I hope so.
Yeah, I noticed when you were doing this, you messed around a lot with, panel transitions on this, which I think was pretty interesting. So you'll have like, there's one that's a large spread where Wolverine is jumping down, and you see, as you're going down, you're seeing all of the AIM guys who are floating out into space, and some of the dirt and debris and all that stuff around it before you get to that big action shot at the end of him just digging into this station. And what was interesting for me is when I went back and looked at the actual pages, since they were, I think all the pages went up on Caden's Comics art to look at. So I picked that up and saw that you had broken that down into like a couple of different panels when you were actually drawing it. How did you go about ensuring the transitions on that stuff worked and were very smooth?
That was a little tough to figure out. I think John, to be, again, I can't take full credit. John did a lot of the kind of thinking ahead of time, which made things a bit easier for me. I think I was talking to him, and it was the way he put it. It's like, Marvel are having us figure this out for them, which I thought, which was a good way to kind of think about it. And we were, because we were like that. Like, it's weird. It's fun. Like, it's so funny. It's all come out in the space of 2 weeks. I've been working on it since January. I finished it like, I think a month and a half ago, maybe. So it's just so weird anyway. Yeah, that was a little hard to figure out. But I think what happened was I made sure that when I'm doing it, like, those moments are designed to be more vertical. Like, they're what the splash page is. The splash page isn't a splash page. It's different now. It's let's say a vertical sprawl, for lack of a better term. So when I knew that was happening, I'd effectively just made sure, don't draw an AIM guy's hand coming off the panel, because then I've got to try and, because originally what I was going to do was just have a panel break there anyway, because I felt that you would just read it. But I was talking to Jordan about it, and I think Marvel wanted it to be all one image, like the opening with the sword station.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Because I drew it on paper, and, to me, the panel border, your eye would connect them anyway, so you didn't need that to happen. But then, I had it drawn and I had it colored, and I was like, oh no, now actually, oh crap. So what I actually had to stitch them together in Photoshop. It took me ages, because in the certain blending and textures I was doing in the color. What helped was that I did actually color them. I colored this book myself, so I had all the files available to me. If I was handing it off to a colorist, it would be their problem to figure out. But no, I actually had to do it. But that was good, because again, like I was saying about the control element of how you read it, I had full control over the art as well, which was really was very engaging. So it was a mix of both. It was kind of if it's an arm, don't have the arm go off panel, and in the other arm, just stop it where the panel's going to end. And I designed it so there's an element of black space, or there's an element of solid color, so that I can stitch them together and just blend them. Like the hallway scene, or the elevator scene in issue 2, is it? Yeah, I think it's issue 2 where he's going down the elevator. Like I did, I again, I normally don't, but I was so curious to see what people thought. There was some guy going, "This is clearly copy and paste." I actually drew all the elevator. If you see on the sides, there's these patterned lights going down the side. I'm like, okay, I'm going to prove that this isn't going to be copy and paste, because I didn't want people to think it was. So like, that's all hand drawn, and I had to like match them up then on Photoshop. But I'd make sure that I tried and like they met on a black spot, so that I'm basically putting black on black rather than a gradient on a solid color, or trying to match two different gradients. It was little things like that. It was the benefit of me coloring it and me drawing it, was that I could draw in a way, and I could just make those transitions. I knew I'd have to stitch them together later, so I just kept that in mind going in. I don't know if I'm answering your question there. I think I just
no, you totally are. It does.
Like
speak to
I
the
did
challenges of the format.
Yeah, it was easier after the first one because the first one I drew myself into a corner and I had to I had to color my way out of it effectively. So that was very difficult because when I drew the sword station and then like it went off one panel, I specifically like measured, okay, that's 2 centimeters there. So I'm going to start the next one 2 centimeters in. So I had it all measured. I thought this probably won't be too hard to stitch together. I was wrong because it was just one side was slightly off and a gradient didn't quite match. So I learned the hard way with the first one. So I think when I was actually working on the next three, I knew that going in, so that was helpful.
I have to say, when I saw the black and white traditional pencil and ink pages, I was just like, I couldn't believe you actually did it that way.
Oh, cool.
My original thought as I'm reading this is like, he had to have done this digitally because it's such a smooth scroll, and like, how long is this station, or how long is this elevator shaft, or how long is Wolverine falling through space? And it is very seamless. So my compliments to you.
Thanks, man.
But I can just
imagine. I really do appreciate that because that was really hard to figure out. Because as well, the sword station. You mean it's one thing to just draw, say, the station in a panel. But how long is it? How much space does it take up? And where do you crop it to the point? Because the station, you don't see all of the top of the station. I have it cropped to a point where the ring extends, but the main body of it is kind of contained. So there's all these I use the ruler a lot, trying to just kind of work out what in the layouts, because I do everything kind of in layouts about 5 by 7.5 centimeters. So I work it all out beforehand before I start penciling. But that was still it was a lot of kind of tweaking here and there and trying to make it all work. And I really like it when there's a piece of work and you're like, how did they do that? And then you find out, you're like, oh, that's cool. So there's something strangely rewarding knowing that somebody else thought the same thing. That's something I did.
I was in disbelief because, with the vertical shafts of an elevator or whatever, you're like, okay, they're vertical lines. You can just keep going. But, when you have a triangle shape like the sword station, I was like, how the heck did he connect this thing over? It's like 6 pages or something like that. So pretty impressive.
Things like Wolverine in the elevator shaft. It's I don't know if any other artists this happens, but I'll do layouts and then I'll draw on top, and it always, if you're not careful, your drawing tends to get a little bit bigger, which is generally fine, but there is only so much real estate on those pages because they're going to be in a specific format. So I remember I was drawing Wolverine going down the shaft. I'm like, actually, he's too big. This elevator will be a tiny elevator, So I had to kind of shrink him down to a point where he was smaller than I'd like him to be because he can only get so much detail. And that's the weird thing is I see people posting stuff from the story, and the resolution is so much more closer than if somebody posted a page. The page looks good, but there's all these real big, basic panels kind of blown up cover size, which is a little uncomfortable because there's an element of scratchiness to some of my drawing where it's kind of bigger than I'd like it to be, but it's removed from the context in which it is in. So that was kind of hard, is kind of keeping the I don't know, the maths of it all was probably a little frustrating, but no, I'm glad it worked. I'm glad I fooled you all.
So one of the things that I think a lot of your work tends to center around is motion and action. I know specifically when we were coming up with questions, we were thinking about the Moon Knight run, especially that second and okay, I'm about to say specific issues, but pretty much all the issues where it's a big fluid action sequence, and that's something that you bring into this title as well. Is this a comfort zone for you, somewhere where you like to keep your drawings when it comes to an action scene, just keeping them very move or fluid? And how does, since you can't do that horizontal or down the page motion that you tend to do, how does that change when you're looking at just vertical? You got one way for the eye to go.
That's a good question. I think I tend to think in composition. and comes to mind, like I'll do a thing. I know there's a shot in Moon Knight where he's firing his staff, and the grappling hook comes out and it goes right across the page, and little things like that. I'm a sucker for that stuff because it's just very direct. I feel that just the reader knows exactly what's happening. Its eye goes right along with the object, and in a way, this is all this project is. It's just the other way around. So there's things like there's I'm trying to think like the I'm trying to think now. Like the chamber moment in the fourth one, it just brings you right down. Like that's what was exciting actually about those vertical moments is, technically you're using up a lot of space for not a lot. Like where chamber blasts the aim guys is basically a splash page, but it's two long panels. And that's not like if that was a splash page, it would be a very different image. The composition would be completely different. I'd do something very different with it. But because you have I might have talked to you about this before, Zach, but I think like limitations can actually be quite, it kind of pushes you to innovate when you can kind of do anything. So, I tend to lean into the restrictions of the format to push kind of those elements. So, like, I'm not sure, like, I think the nature of this format is fluid anyway, because like I said, like I've read stuff on Comixology before, and you have guided view, or you can kind of tap and you can zoom in, but you can't really do. I mean, you can, I guess, but like I think when this is just from my playing around with it. When your thumb's on the screen and you're scrolling, it just keeps doing that. I don't think you're going to stop and zoom in. I think you're in it and you're connected to it. So I think you're already taking advantage of the momentum in that. But like I said, there was things I would do different with shape and composition had I wider space. But because I was limited, it just pushes you in one direction. In a way, it's actually kind of freeing because you don't have to second guess or wonder, well, where's it going to go? It's like down. It's going to go down. Whereas with things like a page, it would be like, if it goes across, does it need to go down here or there? Like so. And like I said, I don't like that about this medium, is that it's restrictive. But because I'm playing with it, I might as well lean into what it actually does. Like I don't see me doing a whole load of this type of comics because I think, like, I don't know, there's only so much I think I could really do with it before I kind of run out of ideas.
Well, that's an interesting question because, you've said a couple times since we've been talking that this is, while it's a new and exciting experiment, that you don't necessarily think of it as something that you want to continue with, as let's say an option, right? Even though you're working on a sequel. We can talk about that in a little bit, but this is a format that at least Marvel is investing in. DC has now started doing it on webtoons. And I'm just curious, do you think having done it and obviously having some success with the visuals here, do you think that this is something that is going to be a format that'll stick around? Do you think it's something that'll be part of the comic landscape, or do you think it's like kind of like a flash in the pan?
I don't know. Look, who knows? Nobody knows. Well, there's your answer. No, no, it's a fair question. I think that if people are telling stories to suit the format, it's going to be great. So, for example, I'm doing the next one, and I think what I'm going to do would be very different if I was getting to say write and draw an X-Men miniseries. It would be a very different story. I personally think that this format is more it's more suitable for kind of action storytelling than say, I don't know. I wouldn't want to read Watchmen in that format. You know what I mean? I think if it's drawn for the medium that it's in, like I said, it's not just chopped up stuff that's reassembled. Right. I think you can get some really cool storytelling out of it, and it doesn't need to be me doing it. I'm like, lots of actually Nate's the only one I've actually Nate Stockman's one is the only one I've really seen, and I was really impressed with what he did because he just did some kind of really crazy stuff that that was totally different to mine. And we talked before. I knew he was doing that story. So he'd seen what I was doing, and I didn't see what he was doing till he was finished. And it was really interesting. So I think what I do would be different to what somebody else does. But I think they'd be harder to write than draw, because if you're not, like I said, like at the moment, the one I'm doing, I'm not getting. I'm finally getting to write and draw an X-Men story. So what I'm going to do, it's about a world of hates and fears. This, where's the pathos? Where's the overall theme? So I'm like, it's very limited pages with a very limited, directional flow. There's really no point kind of like trying to get all highfalutin with it. I think the best thing you can do is, because especially too, I think looking at your phone, it's not, no one really wants to be looking at their phone for an hour. Looking at small text. I think as long as it's being used for the format, the advantages of the format are being capitalized on. I think there's actually a lot of room to do some really cool stuff, especially if you like hand it to a creator, and especially I think a cartoonist, because I think that's one of the reasons why I was probably asked was, I think John probably thought that like a cartoonist would have a good feel for this, rather than like a writer and then handing it over to an artist, because that's already there's already a kind of a separation there in how you're going to adapt it. And this is a whole new way of doing it. So I'd love to see some kind of cartoonists working in that format, because I think they would experiment and kind of innovate more.
Cool.
Now you mentioned a bit of the collaborative process on this, and comics is a collaborative medium. You've got a writer and artist who are not doing things in isolation with one another. They're both building, and I say artists, but an entire team, building a story together. What was the collaborative process like on this comic? Were you given any say into, like what characters would show up? I know like Chamber, for example, is one that is a favorite of yours and something that you like to draw. So is that something that John knew? Okay, well, I think Declan's going to draw a pretty good Chamber, so I want to make sure he gets added in here. Or what was the whole process like making this together?
Well, with Sir Jonathan Hickman, praise be upon him, we didn't talk that much, to be honest. I mean, we talked on the phone a couple of times. My kind of reaction was like, "Why me?" But I think his was like, "Why not you?" So that's fine. But no, like I said, he'd already given this some thought by the time I was kind of brought on. Like again, it wasn't. I would say it was kind of him and Jordan had kind of talked a lot about it, and there was a script. The script wasn't what the finished version. It was kind of a overall light, let's say a first draft script. But it wasn't really about the script. It was more about like what was happening, figuring out the mechanics of the storytelling. And it was kind of very hands off after that. Once I'd kind of figured out the first issue, I think John got the second one in. He had the thing with the Wolverine punching the guy, the AIM guy over and over again. That was totally
okay. That did feel like it was a Jonathan Hickman bit. I figured that was more him than you on that specific bit.
Yeah, mainly because I would have liked to have drawn every panel, but it was 24 of them, and I was drawing it on a page, so that was a weird one, because I actually worked on smaller panels, and then ended up kind of Frankensteining them together to make that work, which is weird. It's weird for me to spend that much time on a computer with the art, but it's what John wanted to do, and it was funny, so I was all for it. After that, it was pretty much me. Like John just gave it an outline for the third and fourth one. He was like, go for it. And also he wanted me. We talked about me doing the follow up one, so which was very, very accommodating of him. Basically said, "What do you want to do for the next one?" And we'll end it where the next one picks up. So he basically was happy to write it in a place to kind of just pass it over, and I'd carry on, which was very cool of him. Like, my thing was like, just like, it's like, so, what happens next? I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to know? You're the X-Men guy, and I think that was just it. I think that was my only problem with the whole project, was just that there were so many moving parts to the X-Men universe, and as much as I've read, I'm not on top of it all. So it was very hard for me to kind of pitch stuff, because I wasn't exactly sure, can I do this, or You know,
Mm.
it's what they've done is great, but there's a whole new kind of mythology to it now, and I'm not, versed in all of it. So it was hard to go, can we do this? Because when I didn't want to be pitching something there's no way we could possibly do.
Right.
But I will say what was helpful, like I'd never kind of worked with issue 3 and 4. Basically, it was an outline that John gave me. So, the AIM guy on the toilet, that was me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I clearly John likes doing that, and like I'm one for a joke too. But and that's why I think doing them that Marvel's method was helpful to me for the next arc that I'm doing now. Because like I said, I'm kind of writing it in the layouts.
Okay.
Because I'm playing with the space, I get a much better idea of the space that I have. And when I'm looking at my layouts, I can kind of go, okay, this, I want to have a vertical moment here, and I can kind of plan the storytelling around that way. And it was handy with the outline that John had given me, because I had the outline. I could just kind of work from that. It was fun was actually getting them back lettered, because there was no script. So I actually got to read them and see what everybody was saying. That was interesting. I never ever really wanted to work Marvel style, but for some reason this kind of worked. And yeah, no, it was fun. And really, like John just, I think once we got that first one done, I think John just wanted me. I think he wanted me to take the reins more than I felt comfortable taking them, just because the X-Men is him and Jordan, and I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm just more eager to please. Like I keep asking, like, is this okay? And they're like, yeah, you go do it. I'm like, I'll do this, right? So that was good. I think it was great, because I got to kind of problem solve at the beginning, then get comfortable with the second one, and then with the third and fourth one, kind of just have a lot more fun with the storytelling.
Now, no, that's exciting. So I'll say from a art standpoint, one aspect that I really associate with your art is a heavy use of ink wash to add dimension and depth to a lot of your work. Now that you're coloring yourself, how do you feel about adding that shadow and all that stuff in the inking stage versus jumping in when you're doing your colors and just messing with gradients and things like that?
Yeah, there's a kind of a, could I just go easy on this and not like have to bother my arse doing all the grey wash? But at the same time, I think however it's colored or not colored, I am always happier with it's like a constant battle between what is the most efficient way to get this done, and what is going to make me the happiest. So I could stop doing washes and color more, but I think I would be less happy with the drawing overall. And after 2 or 3 books, that's probably going to, I'm not going to say make me depressed, but it's probably going to get me down. Whereas now we're writing and drawing and coloring, that's slowing me a lot down, and that's tough too, because there's all these other things you want to do, but you're taking so long on these. So it's everything I'm doing now, I'm like, do I want to color it? Yes. Should I color it? But with this, I definitely felt like I had to. Well, at first, owning the artwork more in a way, like I said, like the storytelling and everything, it just felt kind of better to just see it through the whole way. But I would say that I don't think I've cut back at all on the washes. Maybe in some cases, maybe there's like a sky I know that I could like ink clouds into, but really a very subtle like a bit of brushwork in color will be better. It'll achieve the effect more, especially with knowing that I have to stitch some of this stuff together. It's much harder to stitch, like say, a wash pattern with another wash pattern. So in some cases, I'd say I'll probably dial it back maybe 10% and let the coloring kind of take over. But the danger is, what I don't want to do is I don't want to dial it back 50% and try and make the color, over compensate for everything. So you kind of have to go like, this will satisfy me as an artist, and this will satisfy me as like actually getting it done for the deadline. And that's always a delicate balance. But I think I managed to. Well, it was also weird because there was no print deadline with this, but there was a rough deadline for when they wanted to launch. So it didn't feel real in a lot of ways because I didn't know what was going to happen with it. And now that it's all out, it feels even less real because it doesn't exist. but it does. You know, it's on the internet, but that's all. So it's all very strange. Sorry, I'm waffling again.
No,
No.
I actually wanted to ask about that because you said that you started working on this in January, right? Here we are in September. And so, I mean, I'm assuming this was when did you actually wrap the first story here? Like, how long has this been done for publication? For a while?
I can't remember. I would say best guess. I mean, I could check my email now, but that's not very good audio.
Just
Um,
a
I would
guess.
say
I'm
maybe.
just curious.
Yeah, no, I guess I'd say it was probably March.
Oh,
When I
okay.
finished the first
Okay.
one. It was just a lot of back and forth at the beginning, and then kind of playing around, and then so I would have done my layouts, and then I would have penciled it, and then colored it, and it didn't go by super fast because again I'm drawing in a way I'm not quite used to. So I wouldn't say it was super slow, but it was it was not super fast.
Mhm.
And then and we just got that first one done. I got it colored, and then they had the tech people kind of looking at that for a while, and then I got started on the next one. So I did them in 10, or I did them in chapters, like the way that they're read. But I'd say the first one was the slowest, and then I'd say it was taking me. See, it's weird because it's effectively 10 to 12 pages for those, but they took me longer than a regular 12 pages would. But I'm also coloring them too. Sorry, I'm not giving you an answer here at all because
but that's what I'm curious about, is because obviously you're a seasoned pro with, hey, here's a 22-page comic, right? We're going to flip through this, but for this I feel like there's so much variability in terms of what it could look like, and then of course you add to that the fact that you're scripting it, you're coloring it. Like, how much more time do you have to invest in actually when you're in charge of everything?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, what I do with this one is I wrote an outline for the whole 4 parts that got approved. So I did the layouts like over when did I finish them? Probably about a month or so ago. I just wanted to do the whole book in layouts because I knew there was some plot points I wanted to make sure they hit, and I just wanted to kind of see. So it's all laid out now. I just started penciling it yesterday. And I mean, I hope this one is going to go faster because, one, I'm not as worried about what people are going to think because, like, I'm not looking to please John. As long as Jordan's happy, that's fine, and he seems happy so far anyway.
He's a happy guy.
He is. You don't want to cross him though. Oh, I've heard stories. No. But I think this one will, because I know exactly what I'm doing with this, and I kind of know what's going to work and not work. I'm hoping this one's going to be a lot more efficient. So yeah, I'm giving myself not less time, but I think I'm pretty sure this isn't going to take as long because so much of the beginning of it was just like so much, thinking and problem solving and what have you, and wondering like what the hell is this going to like. It's going to be so weird, but it has been kind of cool to work on something so different. Like however many years I'm doing this now, 10 or so. It has been interesting to do something that's actually very different, rather than just another story,
No, that's exciting. It's a fun experiment to see. I know it was a cool little surprise drop, and we're excited to see where it goes from there. So are some of our listeners who had a few questions they wanted to shoot your way. The first one comes from Asimov Fangirl, who asks, "Hello, for monetary/PR reasons, the Krakoan Council decided to create a subscription service called X-Men Unlimited. What would it be about? Thanks."
Okay. What? No, so the council make one called X-Men Unlimited. I imagine it would maybe be unlimited what's the term they're using? Respawns for the
That'll work.
Yeah.
That honestly,
That's a great idea.
I tried to sign up for ESPN Plus over the weekend, which, fun fact, does not get you access to ESPN. That name is misleading and definitely made my Monday night game a little bit of a challenge.
I'd say so.
But I think Unlimited Resurrection would be a very that would be a streaming service I would subscribe to.
Yeah, I think so.
Austin Gordon asks, "Is there a particular character you think would be especially fun to draw in this vertical scroll format?"
Well, the answer is yes. And to find that answer, look for the sequel in the next few months.
Nice.
Because the nice thing about this is, well, my kind of pitch to Jordan and John was like, the fun part of this is because I just love drawing Wolverine, but there are so many X-Men. Like you could just basically have a guest X-Men per section and use the most out of those. So, like Chamber, for example, the Chamber in issue 4 was like, basically it was like whatever mutant you want. So I drew Chamber.
I love it.
So that, and I'm like, you know what? This is complete fan service on my point of view, but I'm going to do it. And what's going to work for Chamber? Well, I felt like a blast. So that's what that vertical one. So, but I already had other X-Men in mind for what you could do with the vertical thing. So I knocked down a couple, but so I can't answer that question because you're going to see it.
Cool.
That is exciting. Uncle Shouty asks, who has the second best hair in comics, with Banshee obviously being the first?
Well, Banshee had a few styles. He had like the probably like what I got going on. With the
I wasn't going to say anything, but yes, essentially.
Yeah, with the meat hooks. Back in Generation X, he had a pretty.
It was tight in Generation X.
A little cleaner.
Hair. I mean, Aurora has to have the best game.
That's probably true. Her hair is often a cloud now, which tends to.
I remember the Carlos Pacheco X-Men run. She had like kind of like a similar kind of thing like I going on now, but like long hair on the side that went all the way down, like her cape and stuff. She's had so many rockin' hairstyles. She's got to be the top. I mean, number one.
That is probably right. The last question, I think this comes from Charlie En, who asks, how tall is too tall for a panel?
Well, there is no too tall, I don't think. I haven't done it, so don't worry. But, you would be interesting to troll the audience in like having a very long drop, like do the Andy Kaufman thing, where like you think it's broken, like there's so much white space. Is this thing on anymore? That would be interesting. If I did more in that format, that's what I would start doing. Just because you can, if you can, anything that gets the audience kind of. It's a difference between taking an audience out of the story and playing with them. But technically, there's no too long. For me, it was down to some technical questions as regards the size of the page I was drawing on and the format in which we kind of upload the files to Marvel. But like, say, I'm drawing, say, 10 pages for Marvel, but Marvel aren't going to say that the files need to be a certain length. You can kind of really go along. So that's why I kind of love to see some other cartoonists try it, because I think they'd really take advantage of it. But the answer to the question, I think, is there is no. I don't think there is too tall.
The limit does not exist.
There is no spoon.
Well, that's good. Well, Declan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us this evening. I know you've got a couple of projects going on right now. Specifically, Time Before Time, which I believe just wrapped up its first arc as we're recording. I think a week or two ago.
Yeah, no, last week actually. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
okay.
Last week issue 5 came out, so that's the first arc finished. We're starting the next arc in a couple of months. In the meantime, next month is going to be an issue I've drawn actually. It's going to be it's a self-contained story set in the world, but not specifically about the main characters. Kind of wanted to kind of expand the world a little bit with a story. You can just read this one issue and kind of get a feel for the book. It's kind of the fun thing about doing creator-owned stuff is you can just kind of make those calls. So so that was fun. So I went from drawing X-Men to this vertical whole thing, and then I did Time Before Time afterwards. So it was nice to just do some wide panels again and.
Comfort zone.
Do a splash page There's a splash page in there purely just to kind of make me feel. There's 2 splash pages actually. I went nuts.
Now, for folks who may not know, because I don't know if you've ever picked up on this. Sometimes X-Men fans only know about X-Men comics that are going on and not everything else. What is Time Before Time?
Shocked to hear you say that, Zach.
I don't know anyone who would be like that.
Yeah. Well, I will say the crossover for X-Men fans is that it's a crazy time travel story, and the X-Men certainly have experienced there. Time Before Time it's a story about a criminal gang in the future, and the world's getting so basically bleak. There is no future, so desperate people they hired this criminal gang to basically smuggle you into the past and to a better time. And our story features Tetsuo, who basically is trying to get out of the gang. So he has his plan to escape into the past, away from his criminal life, but it does not go well, and hijinks ensue. But yeah, like I love working on it. It's just from the design to Joe Palmer's artwork, which is wonder who, like, it's got this kind of Magnolia thing going on. I think X-Men.
Yep, that's it's like Magnolia without as much heavy use of shadow.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound reductive, because you can say, Magnolia-esque for nearly like anything, but heavily stylized. Actually, I was looking at Larry Stroman's stuff there recently, because I actually never really read it as a kid, and that might be a clue as what's coming up. Yeah, I kind of, his stuff kind of reminded me of that a little, just because it's very expressive with very kind of very heavy design kind of elements. But yeah, no, it's like, I mean, if there's I know some people aren't never going to read this book, but who are just diehard X-Men fans. But I don't know what I've always liked about. I think I remember Grant Morrison saying something like this, that the X-Men stories are sci-fi stories, and I kind of feel that way about them specifically. I think there's a really great sci-fi crossover with like the X-Men lore and the genre. So I don't know. Yeah, I should check it out. The first volume, the standalone issue 6 is out next month, and the same day the collection of the first arc is out, volume 1.
Yeah, folks, go check that out. It's a real enjoyable read. I've been not catching up on. I've been reading it as it comes out, and it's been a fun time to be checking that out. Otherwise, anything else you have going on?
Yes, nothing I can talk about. Well, yeah. Well, there's the. I'm currently working on the follow up to this one. But this is the weird thing. Do people know that there's going to be a different team for the next issue?
No, they don't. Unless they read your newsletter, I do not think they do.
Uh-oh. Well, they'll find out on Monday anyway. Yeah. But I mean, I saw some of the art. Looks great. And X-Men fans will be happy with who's writing it. But so I'm working on a follow up of the one that just ended at the moment. I'm drawing that, and I'm writing an Elektra story for Elektra Red, White, and Blood. And covers. There's always the odd cover coming out. Except for this X-Men book, which drove me crazy. I get to do X-Men and my own X-Men book, and I don't have a cover.
Listen, you've done a handful of X-Men covers, to be fair.
Not for my one, though. It's always somebody else's stupid X-Men book.
Declan, if people wanted to find you and your work, where's a good place to go on the internet?
Twitter and Instagram are really the two places. It's at Declan Shalvey, all one word for both. And as Zach mentioned, I have a newsletter. The link is on my Twitter, where every 2 weeks I kind of posted like basically a work blog, kind of about what I'm working on. Some stuff is kind of I have to kind of use code names for, but I like to kind of show a peek at some stuff that isn't, hasn't been released or talked about yet. So you can subscribe to it there.
Very cool.
That's very, very exciting. I know, folks, for us, you know where to find us at ComicsXF, or Adams at Arthur Stacy on the Twitter. We've got a bunch of cool stuff up on the website, comicsxf.com. Make sure you check that out. And otherwise, next week, we're going to be back here. We're going to be talking about the all-new Wolverine, getting some fun little action on those. But once again, Declan, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for asking.
No problem. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!